Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson, and welcome to Lecture 9A, which we are going to be discussing Project Quality Management. Over the next series, Lecture 9A, 9B, 9C, we're going to be referring to the information found in Chapters 11, 12, and 13 of your site management textbook, but we're going to be adding, enhancing, and doing a bunch of things that take it above and beyond. So hopefully you'll enjoy this journey. So in this section, we're going to be looking at quality management systems, or total quality management, as it's often referred to. We're going to be distinguishing between different components of what is quality control and what is quality assurance and what do they mean within a quality system. We're going to be looking at some of the foundations of quality management, and we've been talking in this course also about lean construction methodology. Well, at the roots of lean construction methodology is the quality management movement, and a lot of that was instituted in the early days by Dr. Edwards Deming and J.M. Juran. So we'll be discussing a little bit of historical applications and how things have kind of come to be what they are today. So when we think about quality and what it is, we define it as conformance to standards and specifications. So that's important. We got to know what it is and what we're trying to do with it. It really is sort of narrowing in on what are we required to do in our scope of work for a project? What do the drawings, what do the specifications tell us? What are the acceptable tolerances within those specifications so that we know the requirement that we need to meet? So we also have quality management definition, meeting or exceeding customer expectations. This can be a little bit nuanced at times because true quality management, you want to know what it is that you're supposed to meet and just arrive there. Doesn't mean that you're doing a lot of extra things necessarily. So we'll discuss that a little bit too. Not related to price. So really we have a function to fulfill, and doesn't matter if it's a low price, we can still meet a certain quality expectation if we have the right systems and processes in place. So we talked at the beginning of the course, here it's coming back again, setting goals. What does that mean? SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound. And we also talked about the importance of processes and systems. And processes and systems allow us to repeat successes over and over again. What they also, in a quality realm, allow us to meet the quality expectations that are required as part of our contracts and what the client expects. So that is that aspect. And so that's why I've got here, quality means meeting requirements, not adding extras. And this is something I've put in there. It needs to be clarified. There's a term called gold plating. And gold plating means doing extra things above and beyond what you're supposed to do. One of the problems with gold plating, sometimes when you do extra things, you think it's what the client wants, and it's not even really what the client wants. Sometimes the gold plating means that you've done something extra at the expense of something else you were supposed to do. So we have so much difficulty on our project satisfying the actual requirements for a project. If we start gold plating things, it's going to distract us and make us not even achieve the minimum acceptable standards. And if that is the case, then we're not going to have happy clients, and we're not going to be profitable either. So it really means, when we talk about quality in that sense, it means meeting our project requirements, what we're responsible for. The metrics to measure quality should be determined before you start. And so that's where we'll talk about quality assurance compared to quality control. We've got to have a plan in place, and we've got to know what the mechanisms are that we're going to enact that plan to ensure quality, to build confidence that we're going to meet quality expectations. And project manager is really responsible, project manager and the site team, site superintendent, for defining quality management processes for the project, and also understanding that those processes probably are going to need to improve. That's the whole continuous improvement aspect. So as you get quality better, you want to get better and better and better and better at meeting those standards. So continuous improvement is part of that process. So quality management, continuing plan to provide quality in every phase of the project, not just certain phases. It's going to be throughout, and this lecture is broken into 3 sections. You'll see in 9C we actually discuss the commissioning test and commissioning process and how that comes in to being. So we want to have emphasis on quality assurance and quality controls. All right. So quality assurance is the plan to achieve quality. I'll give you a little bit more detail on that in a minute. And quality assurance, the inspection, testing, and necessary remediation. I have a little graph that I think that'll explain that really well. And we also know that there's this interaction that takes place. We've discussed this earlier in the course. Textbook just brings it up now. It's something that I think you should have in your head all the time when you're doing things. And the other ones, of course, are safety and scope. But really, there's this interaction that we have that takes place between cost, time, and quality. And so how does this fit together in our overall project plan? Where are we really being constrained, and what can we do to ensure that we meet the quality standards that are expected? I talked about, in one of my earlier lectures at George Brown College, when I was acting director and I was project managing facilities, some of the challenges we had with time when the project fell behind schedule, and what actually ended up suffering was quality. So we have to have mechanisms in place to try to ensure that we meet the quality expectations for the project. So this, I think, is a pretty good explanation. I've seen this shown a number of times on the web. I think this is pretty good illustration of understanding the difference between quality assurance and quality control. So quality assurance is really the program and systems that you're putting in place that are building confidence that you will be able to satisfy your internal needs to meet quality expectations and your external needs. External needs, client, government agencies, regulatory authorities, certification program standards, etc. So you want to have a robust quality assurance program, because that's going to mean that when you actually do the quality control aspect and you're testing to see how you are performing, you are going to be in a successful position, right? So the quality control, which is within the quality assurance program, is the actual testing to see, are we actually fulfilling the requirements that we set out in quality assurance? It's going to provide feedback for us to see if we have to make adjustments, if we have to tweak our quality system program, and do we have to adjust our quality assurance program. We get feedback that may give us information for the overall quality system beyond even just this individual project that we've set this quality assurance program in place. So this is how they fit into being. I think a lot of people don't fully understand there's a difference between quality assurance and quality control. So it's important to distinguish that. So, and some of the processes of bringing quality to the project, steps that we can think of: make suggestions for areas of improvement. Quality is a continuous improvement area. We can always do things better. And that's why the fundamentals of lean construction, lean manufacturing follow that continuous improvement movement. Break down into parts, provide measurement tools so that we can check and we can ensure that quality standards are being met. Be really creative and innovative in working the solutions. And we talked about the 8 areas of waste in lean. And if we have underutilized talent not engaged in the project, we are losing opportunities for these creative solutions and suggestions because people have shut down. Implement and observe solutions at work. We've talked about management by wandering around. You only can see it if you're wandering around, if you're observing it, if you're taking note of it, if you're creating a culture that believes in that. And acknowledge individuals and award ingenuity, both intrinsically by compliments and extrinsically, possibly by incentive systems. Incorporate solutions on a broad scale. So this is where it can feed back into the overall system for the business, so that the business also improves with its learning. Systematic learning through the business is important, corporate learning. Building blocks that constitute quality, activities made up of smaller components, quality defined by client satisfaction, elimination of rework and mistakes. Obviously, this is, these are getting into the areas of waste. Quality measured by attaching costs, quality improvement, productivity, commitment, and teamwork. So these are some of the building blocks that we can do to improve quality, right? So activities made up of smaller components, we can put together things that we increase the flow of work, where we reduce variation in the process and have a more steady flow, where we have subcontractors more engaged in the day-to-day processes of what is being done. And so again, really, if we don't meet the client's expectations, then we haven't satisfied their quality level. We either misunderstood, so it wasn't defined, their expectations, or we did something that did not meet those expectations. And so what was it, and how can we correct it? And how can we avoid that problem the next time? Anytime you have rework and mistakes, a lot of cost, a lot of impact on the time, a lot of impact on the cost, and obviously quality is the issue. Quality can be measured by reviewing costs that are planned, and then what the actuals are, and then why are we have these variances? Where's the variation coming from? Is it in this area here? And if it's not in that area, maybe in our estimating, we have to improve our processes in our estimating program to assure better accuracy. So quality improvement involves productivity, commitment, and teamwork of the parties involved in the project. So at the root of the quality control movement, it's good to take a historical view, is the work of, well, there's a lot of history. We can go back to the Industrial Revolution, and everything was about productivity and centralizing and de-skilling the work. From that, we got Fordism and Taylorism in the manufacturing sector, the assembly line, the scientific study of management with Taylorism. And then we got into post-World War II, where there was a lot of production of things being done very quickly, but there was a lot of issues with quality. And Deming and Juran were two individuals, probably the worst quality, or probably one of the highest areas where a lot of materials that were coming out of a particular country was happening around Japan. So in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there was a lot of stuff sent from Japan, and it was exported to North America, but there was a lot of quality issues with it. And this kind of ties to, we've had a lot of materials and that come from China over the last few decades. It's a similar kind of scenario. And the stuff that first came out of Japan, as I may have said earlier in the course, was kind of considered to be junk as far as quality goes. It was inexpensive because the labor rates were very low at that time, not today. And quality was very suspect. So two leading quality experts, Deming and Juran, went to Japan and worked at trying to improve their quality production. Particularly, we have the work of Deming was key to the Toyota production system. And part of what they did, for example, one of the examples that you can sort of identify with is this prospect of continuous improvement, setting standards and continuously improving on them. That plan, do, check, act, that'll come up in a few slides from now. So a good example happened with Deming, and Ford Motor Company actually noticed it. They were producing a or manufacturing a car with transmissions made in Japan and the United States. And this is much, much later. This is when Japan was making really good stuff. So this was like in the 90s or the 80s. By that point, the quality control system had really changed the way Japan had been doing things, and they were challenging the US, North American big three automotive manufacturers. So Ford, at one point they bought Mazda, and I think they had Mazda producing transmissions for them in Japan, and they were also producing them in the US. And they noticed that the transmissions coming from Japan had far fewer failures in them. And they were wondering, well, we sent the same specifications, the tolerance levels should be the same, and we're getting far more failures from our own. So what's different? And so then they started looking very, very carefully at the tolerances in the Japanese parts compared to the North American parts. And so the example is given down there. I don't know, I think it was more in thousandths of an inch than the example given, but I'll use this example just so that you can see from comparison. The tolerance levels, so 300 millimeters plus or minus 3 millimeters, that was their tolerance. But then when they checked the Japanese parts, they were only 1.5 tolerance. Well, the Japanese checked the designs and saw, well, you know what, it's not going to be a big deal for us to reduce the variations. We'll do X, Y, Z, and then we will build a better product without any extra work, really. It's just how they set up their systems to flow with that. And so they were producing much, much better transmissions. And the key word is work to minimize variation. Variation causes a lot of problems. Variation in construction causes a lot of problems when people work at different rates and one group moves a lot faster than another group, and then all of a sudden they catch up to the next group, and then there you've got that workers waiting for work and work waiting for workers aspect that is phenomenally important in lean construction. We don't want to have workers waiting for work. That's a waste. We don't want to have work waiting for workers. That's a waste. So we want to have a more even flow and less variation in the time frame. So similar to that in construction is Deming's movement on quality. And so there was a lot of learning that Ford took out of that and started applying a lot of that in their systems in North America. The other one, as I mentioned, was J.M. Juran. He was kind of instrumental coming up with Pareto's Law. Now, Pareto came up with Pareto's Law, but it was largely forgotten by the 1950s. Vilfredo Pareto, Italian economist, saw the relationship between 20% and 80%. And so J.M. Juran understood this law and understood how it affected quality. And if you are going to if you have limited resources, if you're going to make the biggest bang for the buck, then you really want to identify the few vital tasks, or the critical few, right? The critical few, or the vital few, as it's also known. So whereas 20% so it'd take 20% of your time to make 80% of the improvement in your results. So you're going to take those vital tasks that you can implement quickly that are going to give you a high success in your finished product. 80% of time expended on 20% of the results, you're going to spend much less focusing in on this. You want to look at these first before you start thinking of any of these, right? So this is the low-hanging fruit, another way of phrasing it, the low-hanging fruit that will offer you the best returns. Very important concept to think about, very important in a lot of ways. You could think of it, 20% of your clients make you 80% of your profit. So that means you want to really make sure that you retain that 20% of your clients, right? It's not always exactly true, but it's definitely a concept. 20% of your clients take 80% of your time. Another 20% of your, when you're looking at time. That's why some companies, they will trim some of their clients. If they're, I don't know, problematic, they're complaining all the time, they're taking a lot of extra resources, is it worth it for us to do work with this client, right? And then they'll say, you know what, for us, it's not worth it. and they'll cut them loose, or they won't bid any more projects for that particular client. I've definitely had a few like that I determined they're just not worth it. 20% of your subs take 80% of your time. This is also true. You have new subs, you have problematic subs, and that's a problem. So that's where you would have that issue. 20% of your employees take 80% of your time. 20% of my students take 80% of my time. We're coming up to assignment time. I'm seeing that 20% of the students, oh, I didn't have time to do this, I didn't have time to do that. That's those, they go in that group, right? So you understand that that's coming. 20% of your investments contribute to 80% of your losses. 20% of your investments contribute to 80% of your losses. 80% of your effort often leads to 20% of your results. 80% of your effort, 20% of your results. 20% of your activities take 80% of your time in planning and execution. Now, are they giving you the reward? If they are, great. If they're not, rethink it, relook at it, pare some of it out. That'll free you up for some of the more important things. A lot of this too ties to goal setting and life. You can only do so many things at one time. So if you can only do so many things, narrow it down. There's a concept called the one thing. Narrow it down. What is the most important thing that is going to offer me the greatest return for the investment of my time? So hopefully you can see how this can help you in your management practices too. When you've got a full load of things, there are some of those things, a lot of those things are falling into the category of the trivial few, right? So the the trivial many. So they're falling into the category of the trivial many. So you're going to get a better return by focusing in on the vital few, critical few. So hopefully that's making some sense when we think about how we can apply it in the real world. Every project's different levels of complexity can vary depending on the skillfulness of the contractor. So you have to look at how this applies in your particular situation, and when there's opportunities to think about it. If I know 20% of my subs take 80% of my time, well, I could probably better be proactive if I've got a couple that I've kind of pre-identified as being a little bit problematic, making sure that I micromanage those few a little bit. The ones that I'm confident with, they're not going to need it. So I can also save myself some time that way. It's not bad to go back, read this, contemplate it, think about it a little bit. Think about how these things apply to you in your own life, and that can be useful right away. So when you start applying it there, when you get into construction projects and that, you'll see very readily. You'll observe things, you'll pick them up. And again, it's not a perfect 80-20 or 20-80 all the time, but it might be 10-90, it might be 30-70, but it does fall into that zone. So Deming had what he called the 14 points. And if you want all 14 points, you can Google it and you'll see them. But basically, create consistency of purpose, right? You've got to have a consistent purpose on your projects. And we talked about the goals, time, cost, quality, and understanding what is our purpose. And if it's varying all the time and you don't know what it is, it's a moving target, you don't have clarity, that's a problem. This is really about creating a culture where you put quality first. And if you put quality first, and remember, quality is meeting the expectations of the contract. It's not going gold plating everything and going way beyond that. If you put quality first and you get very efficient and productive at it, and you reduce and eliminate waste, what do you think that means to your bottom line? What do you think that means to your brand, your clients, their happiness? What do you think that means to your subcontractors and the other stakeholders that you interact with? This is going to be a successful business. All right. One of the highest standards for qualities in the world, I think the Toyota production system, and Toyota sets a very high standard, or has set a high standard in the past, is their quality aspect. You look at quality vehicles and things of that nature. Toyota, Lexus, they're always right near the top, and higher than many high-end brands. So Why have they been so successful? You can look to that. Cease dependence on inspection. Provide ownership of the people doing the work, right? Instead of having separate inspections, as much as have integration and ownership of the people doing the work. Have complete understanding of the gives and the gets. So if I'm a painter, right, much better in a lot of ways is the painter happy with the taping, because the painter is the one that's got to do minor touch-ups and things like that. Does the painter find that the taper did a good job? That's even more important than you as a site manager saying it's good. So does your painter say this is really good? So that's sort of setting the standard for quality for what is acceptable. Where you possible and you have the gives and gets, that means that the taper really needs to know what they need to provide to the painter to satisfy that expectation. So in that sort of relationship, the painter is the customer and the taper is the supplier. So if we think of that, that's what lean construction does. It thinks about people, not just the client as being the customer, whoever I'm giving something to in the process as being the customer. So now you've got a closer relationship and a better understanding of what quality means. Because if I'm the painter, I'm not happy if I've got to touch up a bunch of stuff. I'm also not happy if I paint it and now the site super is mad at me because why didn't I tell them about these defects? So now you're building that peer pressure and that integrated understanding of what's acceptable. Missed that one here. So cease dependence and the practice of awarding on basis of price tag alone. Well, that's one we got to work on construction, unfortunately. That's where an integrated project delivery system comes into play. But definitely we have the practice of awarding on price. But as we talked about when we talked about subcontractors, pre-qualifying, making sure that the people you're accepting the price from are well capable and have the tools and expertise to do the job. So that's different. We pre-qualified people that we know that they can do this work. And now we're basing it on lowest price. That is okay. What's not okay is just somebody decides they want to put in a bid on something and just because they're lowest and you really haven't verified whether they're capable or have the skills to do it, you're probably going to get what you pay for in that case. Constantly devise and implement improvements, continuous improvements. Institute monitoring. Deming was really big on training and continuous education of your employees. Very important. And you know what? It's even more important today. The world is changing by the day, and we have to be able to improve and to change with it. So if I'm a construction leader, I want the best, most knowledgeable workforce that also knows how to learn and educate themselves, and I'm supporting that process in my corporate structure, part of my quality system. Drive out fear, break down the barriers. If people are afraid to say something, they're not going to. If people, if there's some quality issue and it's going to make them look bad and they're scared to say it, they tend to hide it. Difference between North American manufacturers and Japanese manufacturers in the Toyota production system, as an example, somebody working on the line could stop the line. If they see something that's wrong, it's that saying again, if you see something, say something. They don't worry about saying something. They stop the line. There's a team that immediately goes to try to resolve the problem, and they fix it, rather than let the problem keep running through the system, and then you've got a bigger problem later on. So drive out fear, break down barriers. Deming was not a big fan of slogans. I think I may have mentioned in a previous video, I had a Ford car in the early 90s, and every day I had to come home and listen to the commercial, and it would say, Ford, quality is job one. I think it was like job 52. It wasn't job one with all the problems I had with that car. And that's not fixing it, right? So he wasn't a big fan on slogans. I don't think slogans are as big a problem as long as you mean what you say. It's like when we talked about vision, mission, and values. Mission statement, visions, they mean nothing unless you're acting on it and you're living it, and the senior staff are living it. Because having a slogan like quality is job one, but not meaning it and following through with it, that's a big problem. That's a big problem because the employees will laugh at it after a while. So eliminate the slogan aspect. That's where Deming was coming from. Remove barriers to workmanship and pride. So we want to make sure that people take pride in their work, and we want to make sure that there is an engagement. And if we have that engagement of all the workers, it's going to be a positive aspect. So that ties to modern training supervision, vigorous program of education that I already mentioned, and require commitment by all employees. We want to have a fully engaged workforce. That can get into another whole course on motivational theory, intrinsic, extrinsic reward systems, and how do we engage our employees, and how do we avoid disengaging. Sometimes it's as much about making sure we don't disengage somebody that's fully motivated. That would tie to Hertzberg's motivator hygiene theory, where hygiene is the aspect of things that can disengage employees. So the quality plans, the objectives could be increasing, maintaining customer satisfaction, decreasing defects, decreasing amounts of warranty repair, maintaining quality work consistently, obtaining efficiency, and consistently doing it right the first time. Reduce variation. So this is this PDCA, and if you study any kind of quality management, this is going to come into the realm. We call it PDCA. You might also call PDSA. It's really the same thing. The S is study instead of check. So we plan how to meet the customer's expectation. We do the quality assurance program. We perform the work, and then we do the quality control program, and we're checking how is that being carried out and is it working, and then we are looking at how can we improve this process, how can we do this better, and that's the acting. So once you've gone through it, you start going back. It's a continuous cycle, and that's continuous improvement. So job site quality control team, some of the things, that's obviously avoiding waste, avoid duplication of effort, ensure every quality aspect is covered, clear delineation of responsibilities, gotta know who's responsible for what, who's accountable for what, provide effective guidance and oversight on the project, as part of the quality assurance, provide documentation of material, installation, and test, part of the quality management. Protect the owner public and contractors, bring unbiased review. So testing and inspection, and we'll talk about this more with commissioning. And the third part, you want to ensure that whatever it is has been tested. That's why you have building inspectors. That's why you have engineering consultants. That's why you have testing and commissioning agents. It's a third-party review to ensure that what was designed in the specifications, which set the scope, which should set the expectations of what the client wants to receive when you're done, is being met. It's being verified. So inspectors, in their specific, they have the expertise to inspect the work. They're independent. They're not biased. They're not influenced by something. So that's very important. Do not direct the contractor, must make decisions regarding performance, can accept or reject work. There's been a lot of discussion lately with COVID-19 and the vaccine aspect. And so at any time, in the future, you can always think about these things historically. Vaccines have had a history where there's been a lot of effort that's been put into them to ensure the quality. Like the public needs to believe that this is a safe vaccine or they're not going to want to take it. And I was watching the news the other day, and Andrew Cuomo was discussing how New York State, they're going to have an independent check of the processes that's being used by, I think it was the FDA or CDC. to ensure that they've followed the processes, because there's some concern right now with government influence and things like that. So they want to make sure that there is this third party that is checking their processes and systems, and that they've done their due diligence in this area. So testing and inspection in construction, it's the same idea, right? Areas requiring outside laboratory inspection. So these are all things that, again, where you would have outside testing that may be done on different elements of the work being performed. So in this short, and I mean it, this short lecture, I hope I've gotten across the aspect of what is quality assurance, what is quality control, how it fits into our overall quality system. Some of the historical work by Deming and Juran, and that led to lean manufacturing, Six Sigma, lean construction methodologies, a lot of the different quality management programs that you see out there. And quality is not a simple goal to achieve. It's a challenge, and it's a lifetime goal of continuous improvement there. Once you get to a certain spot, then you're looking, how do we do this better? And the companies that are the most successful at that in construction are going to be the most successful on their bottom line and the most successful with their clients. Going back to Pareto's Law, 80% of our clients are repeat clients. That's very typical. You can check one of Jeff Smith's blog, and Elliston discusses that. It's an important aspect. And it's a lot harder to go out and get new clients all the time than to retain the ones that you have. So that's something that good business practices understand, and it ties a lot to quality. And there's always going to be new products and new forms, so there's going to be new challenges that come as a result of that. But if we have the processes in place, workers, we can deal with too the workers that are of varying skill levels, etc. And constructors can utilize different information about specific construction techniques to implement into their quality programs. But it's one of the challenges we have is when we talk about risk and construction and business management, you know, you could keep doing things the same way if you've been pretty successful, and companies tend to want to do that because whatever they did got them there and they're successful. But other companies are going to pass you because they're going to take some risks. And when you take risks, when you do things that are new, you're more likely to run into some quality issues. So you want to ensure that your business is innovative enough and has systems in place for continuous improvement, but you don't want to stifle innovation and risk-taking. It's a balance that has to take place, and it's a challenging balance that companies do over time. So hopefully that's given you a good view of quality and how that impacts construction projects, and at least gives you an overall perspective. So that's what I wanted to cover today. I'll see you next time. So this is Tom Stephenson signing off, and have a wonderful day. Bye for now.